Welcome to Speak Sex. I am your host, Steve Eurydice, and today in our second month of lockdown, we have with us a sister consummate artist, Franceasca Seiden. She's a filmmaker, writer, director, photographer, tarot reader, and sex magic practitioner, healer, and fellow alchemist. So we'll find out more about all of these titles in the podcast right now. Welcome, Franceasca.
Thank you. I just realized how many titles you just named off.
I know, I feel that like a big challenge for us women in the patriarchy has been, not just to have a voice, but to keep fitting our voice in all those little categories, and I feel that like the more that we actually, speak up and try to adopt the voice of the dominant culture, which I call patriarchy, but it oppresses all genders. Being in patriarchy, the more we try to adapt to its prevalent language and speak in a way that's simple and understood by the majority, the more it insists on compartmentalizing us and putting us into little limited categories that it finds, productive, that it considers, monetizable, right? So when one is just an artist, doing what one is called, there is no name per se for it in the dominant culture, in this patriarchy that oppresses all genders. So, if we just say she's an artist, then the 21st century audience understands that to be someone who works mostly in visual art, rather than alchemy or energy exchange or, sexuality or tarot or any of those modalities. So, and, to me, I feel they're all the same. They're all one. They're all aspects of one. But to try and share them, we have to go through the familiar channel of these words that are designed to turn us into, I think, like illustrations, like 2D or 3D versions of our like 6D entities. So anyway, that's why all the titles.
I like that you numbered the entities into 60.
Yeah. So anyway, in your journey, you have worked a lot with transmuting sexual energy, which is really our life force, and which is what we women have plenty of since we're the life creators. Channeling sexual energy into creative outlets, right? Or spiritual manifestations, finding ways of taking that potency of being in a space of desire, of being in a space of high excitement, and then of course of orgasm, which is the one experience that I think everyone shares, where you're out of yourself as you know it. So like, however briefly, you're actually not you as your friends, your dog, your parents, your colleagues, your customers. Ouch! Everyone knows you. You are a greater consciousness. So kind of like being able to access that place, energetic place, that electromagnetic existence, and put it into one's output, which we call work, creative output, or even clarity, life decisions, I think is transformational, and it makes sense to think about it right now when everyone is, shut in, and therefore has time to kind of like look at themselves and think about their choices in life, and think about, different ways of prioritizing, not just kind of like following the trend and doing what everyone expects them, or what's in front of their face, or where most of the money comes from, or what the people around them are doing, but instead doing what perhaps makes them feel the best and most fulfilled. So I think it's a good time to have these conversations, of sexual energy as alchemical transformation and an energy shift, and knowing, accessing that clarity when the world around us has quieted down, and other than like the non-stop feed about the coronavirus, all the other like everyday distractions have subsided a little. So there is a lot of space, that vast space, right, between our ears and our third eye. I think it has made itself like more known to more people. So it's a good time to use ceremonial habits to structure this unknowingness, this time of not knowing.
It's the best time to use any kind of ritual or spiritual practice, because it does provide such, like you said, clarity and empowerment too. Because once you become comfortable in performing ritualistic acts, whatever they might be, whatever the practice is, whether it's the beginning of a practice or middle or experimenting, it does provide this self-empowered way of taking care of yourself, as well as your surroundings and your energy, and then creating this confidence around that you can really take control of your life without only, without just counting on your action. So it's like the law of cause and effect, where you put it's not just blind faith, but you use like this faith of manifestation, where like the will, I will, willing it to happen, plus the action to transform any situation. And that could be energetically, or it could be in a tangible way. It's really hard to keep it going sometimes, because, I've like, even as a human being and as a practitioner, like, starting to use like, for me in sexual alchemy, I use the word trauma, and it doesn't have to be such a traumatic event, but just traumatic experiences that definitely reshape your DNA and the way that you think and the way that you maneuver in the world. All those little things can be, are traumatic events that can be transformed can be transmutated into empowerment. So how do you turn it into power? And like getting stuck in the narrative, in the looping thinking, in that obsessive compulsive thinking that comes back, it's definitely like a practice where you have to be like, okay, I'm in my loop. How long do I want to stay in this loop for? I'll give myself 2 days. I'll give myself a week. I'll be okay when I'm in that looping thought. But I know that
exactly. The entirety of a marriage, the entirety of a motherhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like, the entirety of like my life in my own culture. Sometimes you literally have to transplant yourself, whether it's linguistically or geographically or culturally or role-wise, in order to get out of a narrative if it's really deeply, embedded.
Ingrained.
Yeah.
But sometimes
like,
narrative
generational, especially the generational narrative, which like that's how you learned language. Sometimes you learn language, like the definition of things is given to you from a very, very skewed point of view, and getting out of that original mythology takes work.
Well, that takes a lot of work, and ancestral karmic, patterns and DNA. And I mean, meditation, which is part of any kind of magic, is part of reshaping your DNA, like literally reshaping your cells. So that is, but those triggers, those events, or just having that DNA embedded in us is there. So we do go back no matter what as human beings, unless you're in this like such a high state of consciousness that you've already transformed into the 5D world. And I know some people that have that, which is incredible and it's amazing and it's completely pure bliss. And I'm so like, oh, I wish I could do that, but I can't. I go back into my little loopholes, or if something new happens, like I have my triggers that come up, and the only thing is just practicing or just having the wisdom is knowing that I know that they're temporary and I can use them for good and not just for evil.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say, there is a reason that the Buddha like left the palace, left the kids, left the wife, left other people in charge, right? And went under the banyan tree and sat there. So, it's easier to live in pure bliss if you renounce the responsibilities of the world. If you're not a mother, if you're not a caretaker, if you're not a, health provider or food provider or whatever it is that you've taken on as part of like your service to the world, right? So it's easier if you live from that place. But the moment that you engage in real emotional and selfless relationship, I feel, with others, where you agree to put others before anything else, because that's the ultimate nature of love, then you are not going to be consistently in that like higher consciousness place, because your humanity is going to bring you back into those modes of exchange, of love exchange, I call it, which are not the higher love, but they are like the animal love.
Right?
And it's like that's also who we are. We are this little this like monkeys with like 1% of our brain DNA different. And so we're all of that, I feel. So I don't know that I think that we all need to attain like the highest place of consciousness. I think like kind of like balancing in midair most of the time, it's pretty good. So everything, so that because there are many different parts to play in the world, and if more and more of us are aware and are playing them from a place of consciousness, that's amazing. But we can't all like be enlightened teachers, that's for sure. Or even enlightened farmers.
Yeah.
Somebody has to be with the kids, and somebody has to be in those classrooms, and somebody, has to like go out there in the front lines, or somebody has, there's like a lot of stuff, work to be done that involves daily exchange with each other personally. But yeah, I think that, what I'd like to discuss is, what to do with like all this juice that people have right now. I know that a lot of people are like, masturbating, or at least fantasizing, maybe they're, watching porn, or, talking to new people, texting, and sublimating in all kinds of ways, right? So I feel that like that arousal is good for our bodies, and it supports our immune systems, and it supports our safety, right? As well as like our ascension process. So, whether we're like alone or in a couple space, there are a lot of things that we can do to play with it, and change it around and use it for all kinds of like positive change in our lives. So I wanted to find out what some of your suggestions might be.
One thing I talk about and try to remove is the toxic shame surrounding sexuality, which is why when I see people like you that are doing working in the similar energetic field, and really kind of spotlighting sexual health, however that is taken, I feel like it's probably the best gift that most people can be given, because there's still today so much toxic shame regarding anything to do with like masturbation, or fetishes, or kink, or conversation, or openness. Like, even when you're together for a long time, just because you're together for a long time, you'd be really surprised of like skeletons in the closet because of embarrassment. So I think that in the foundational point of view, for starters, is to start removing the blockages and the toxic shame surrounding anything that has to do with these so-called quote unquote embarrassing or shameful acts or desires for each individual. I mean, obviously I'm not, let me clarify and say that I'm not talking about something that's illegal or that's, harmful to anyone, but I'm talking about the general broad perspective surrounding, healthy, normal, I don't even know what normal would be, but within reason, fetishes. Obviously no harming or killing or anything like that. That's what I'm getting at. No mental harm or physical harm to anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, that's what Speak Sex is all about. And that's why I started this podcast. And that's the message, the main message, which is, just like, don't hide it. Don't keep it in. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed. Just speak it. Once you find the freedom, the self-love to just talk about, to say it, and to say it not just to me and not just to your friends, but to the one you want to be with, the one whose judgment in this way matters to you the most, and say it without that terror of like rejection, then that's it. That's the portal to all kinds of freedoms that are not
Completely.
Just sexual. And my concept for this, podcast and this methodology, so to speak, was that specifically our language and our dominant culture, or let's say the patriarchy, did not regulate what we say during sex. It just has not given us the proper way, let's say, of speaking to each other while we're aroused and while we're having sex. It's like we know all the stuff to say in order to convince each other to mate. We know all the stuff to say in order to convince each other not to talk about it. And then of course everything else that you can imagine in our lives has already been defined and prescribed and given value to by these words that we assign to it, and how we feel about their signifiers, their significations. But when it comes to being naked in that kind of like heated passion where we are closest to, let's say, our animal nature, that's what we have been taught to think of it as, then we're supposed to just be quiet and moan, forget the language, lose the capacity, put that part of the mind, to sleep, and basically make inarticulate sounds until orgasm, after which, we kind of like slowly return to the familiar consciousness, right? So my whole original idea has been that's the space from which to try to speak sex and truth and ourselves, because whatever we may say then, it's our own, it's true. There hasn't been any modeling done for us by our parents or the TV or the phone or, our brothers or our peers or our superstars or whatever. And the stakes are highest, which is when you're most honest and most focused, right? So yeah, speaking sex in all kinds of ways until you can get to that place is, in my opinion, a way to freedom, personal freedom.
100%. I think it starts really kind of obviously within, to be able to be comfortable without someone, without having a mate, to be able to express it freely, to kind of experiment with your own sexual boundaries and your own desires and needs and wants, and embrace them and feel comfortable enough to discuss certain things that, not everything, because not everything is up for discussion, but things that, might be helpful to another human being if you brought it up and you brought it up with confidence. And once that starts like accumulating in your own life force, then when you do find a partner that you want to share this kind of free thinking with, that you are able to hold space for them to also be open about their desires. Because guaranteed, I would say 90% of people have not told their partners from the beginning or throughout the relationship. Maybe not 90, maybe 80. Cause I'm like thinking, I'm like, oh, well, there's a huge fetish community that I'm like kind of like rolling out. But, I would say that, yeah, 80% don't really divulge like the type of porn they're into, if they've slept with the same sex, if they have desires that are not completely, looked at as like heteronorm. I'm talking about opposite sex partners. But, and it goes same with like now, like normal homosexual couples too. That could be something else where it's not, the norm, the quote unquote norm, is talked about, but not the queer eye, kind of like the queer eye for the new guy. Like the askewed point of view, the askewed desire. Something that you've never talked about or shared with, and you feel comfortable enough because someone else is holding space that they're able to listen to you and be like, oh yeah, I understand why that makes sense. And without judgment or without fear of abandonment or without fear of being judged or anything like that. So that to me is like, I think that's the foundation, one of the big parts of foundation of communication and relationships that has been completely missing is this sexual component of like, what do you like? And then that transfers over into how do I put this into the bedroom? Like, how do we translate it into like our sexual life together?
Right. Yeah.
That's my experience.
Well, I think especially with the translating, kind of like both extremes exist, the people who are very reticent and the people who will immediately divulge like all kinds of experiences or everyone they've been with or what, and either could be forms of conquest, and conquest involves like showing off all of your, fancy work, like the peacock opening up the tail. So whatever you consider makes you like special and worth having, worth tasting, you will share. But then I feel like it's, it becomes different when it's in practice, the translation is where we're at, where it's different because, when
the intimacy, it's when it becomes intimate.
When you are actually, naked with each other, looking in each other's eyes, in that kind of like high adrenaline place, which also makes you want to please, want to be liked, it's just like it's a very intense, need to be accepted when you're most naked. So, you feel that you've put yourself in danger. There is definitely that element, so you're looking to your partner for like acceptance. And, finding that balance where you do feel wanted and accepted, but also able to get out of whatever in your mind is the cliche of that desire that you embody at that moment.
That's
the moment of freedom, of like that's the channel, right? And it doesn't matter if you're kinky or queer or whatever, because we all get stuck in a channel, and if you just like stay in that channel, no matter, it doesn't matter like how, kinky it could be.
Well, one man's kink is another man's vanilla ice cream.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. I said one man's kink is one man's vanilla ice cream. Like, my kink could be something so not kinky to someone else, but it's a kink to them. So that's another thing. It's like my kink could be like the most vanilla, not sexy thing, but someone else understands that it's my turn on. So kink is such a broad term.
No, of course.
But nothing has to be kink.
Right. Even within our own definition of what our pleasure is, no matter, we get stuck, we often like come up with something and then we just like repeat that because it works and we get stuck. And then that freedom is no longer there. So the moment that we start assigning patterns repetitively, I feel we lose the, purity of expression. And that's why, the danger matters. It's important to feel like you have things on the line.
Do you think so? I disagree with that. I don't think that's, maybe in a subconscious realm, but I also feel like that fear it can create other problems down the road. What I thought was interesting is that when you said the ultimate freedom, prior to that, is that there is when you are truly naked with your words with someone else, I feel like this is a big reason why women have, some women have inability to have multiple orgasms or orgasm at all, is that there is this block, fear-based block, that either they're going to lose something or it becomes outside of them. And that's what I don't want. That's what I try to stay away from. It has to be about you as well. you can hold space for an individual and have a conversation and have the intimacy of being raw and naked, and then also have this sexual experience where you are making love to your partner and you are fully present. But what I have experienced is that when I have been in my highest orgasmic state, when I'm like having multiple orgasms, freely, like in seconds within each other without a lot of work, it's because I am so so present with myself, as this is my experience, and I'm not just giving to I'm not just pleasing my partner, although I know it's like it's like being presently objective. It's a very, I'm also having this like complete epiphany while we're doing this. So, cause I've never thought about it before, because I have my last few relationships, I've definitely been more on the confident side in my sexuality. Obviously I'm older and I have more experience and I work in the practice, but it has to do a lot with the fact that like I am presently there with them and I'm in love with them and I want to please them and I'm sharing an experience, but I'm also, oddly enough, very present for myself and my own body and my own pleasure and all of that. So that's something that I feel like needs to be kind of put into play in these conversations too, is that it's not a selfish thing at all. It's not like, oh, I'm going to have like 10 million orgasms tonight, but it's like when you feel this confidence and you're able to, your body is able to respond to it by having, or orgasms or squirting or anything that like your body is reflecting what your highest state is, it's happy, complete like bliss and endorphins are running, then you're actually creating kind of more of a playful center for you and your partner to be in, because it gets messy. It literally gets messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the embarrassment factor goes away when the mess comes, because you're like, well, listen, if I'm going to have 15 orgasms in 10 minutes, you're going to best bet that this bet is going to be wet.
Yeah. No, it gets
fluid.
Messy. I mean, I definitely, I think I, always tend to close my eyes, and I close my eyes because I want to go somewhere and not actually be looking at the details, because I'm past, I have gone past the visual into like fully experiential, right, like out of body consciousness through my body. So I don't want the things, the objects, because they feel limiting. But yeah, what I was saying, and I agree with you, all of that, yes, it's about being in yourself and receiving and being totally ready to receive, and knowing how to receive, and having opened your body enough and learned your body enough, on all kinds of like sexual experiences and experiments, so that when new things come your way, you're open to them and you feel them, and you can follow them into new pleasures. And that's what I was trying to say, that it's important to kind of like say yes to pleasure and give because you are receiving, and because you are happy and you want to make happy and you want to share this ecstasy, so that both are in this place at the same time of giving in exchange for receiving. And instead of kind of like giving because you want to please the other, or taking because like that's what you want out of the moment, is you just want to come and release that energy and move on to something else. And yes, slowing down the pace and allowing room for trying things out, and not expecting any sort of like outcome. So even though we talk about orgasm, a lot of sexual experience doesn't have to end in orgasm. Or conversely, a lot of sexual experience can happen, and after a number of times it becomes orgasmic, and before it wasn't, and then it becomes always orgasmic, and then something else, another sexual experience or experiment that you've never tried, and it could be really anything that either partner can come up with, so long as it doesn't have to necessarily end in that predictable way when then we both feel like, okay, we're done. Like it's not like, oh, we fed the body and now we can go back to more important matters, which we tend to think like, we tend to overvalue the mind and undervalue the body, when the body is who we are.
Well, the body is also emotional.
What we depend on to exist. So the body is I.
Yeah, and the body is also our emotional state. So we are not just, we're feeding our spiritual emotional state by feeding the body.
Right.
To me, it's really important that when I'm in a partnership, that I'm able to, even solo, like that I'm able to spend a day with my person or by myself and have a session, have a day session of pleasure, of self-love, of being with my partner, 8-10 times. It's a requirement. It's a requirement to date me. You're going to have to be able to have sex 8 times that day.
Yeah.
No,
and I think
that's
beautiful. I think that's beautiful. It's beautiful, especially right now, to kind of revisit that option. And why haven't we done that if we haven't? Well, maybe it's because we don't make money that way, or maybe it's because we don't get likes that way, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe because it's a private activity that the outside world does not, acknowledge us for. So being aware of those different types of pleasures and rewards and reinforcements, and how many of our sources of reinforcement come from within and make us self-sufficient and whole, and how many of our sources for our personal reinforcement come from outside, and therefore make us more and more dependent, is important. That's an important, easy fucking reckoning, especially at the moment of relative stasis, of relative quiet, a sudden stop in the wheels of life that we're on. So why don't we take a day and devote it to sex? And that's all we do with our partner. Or, there are many other things. We could devote it to all kinds of pleasures that we don't make money of, or we're not identified by in our social or productive existence, but we can still enjoy them. Take the day and tend the garden without the camera.
Well, that's figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
Having a garden,
Eden
is your garden.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but also the literal garden of any type.
Yeah.
But, again, without the camera, without going live and telling everybody what you're doing, why, and how they should be doing it too. Without considering yourself a freaking expert because you've gardened, or you've come 8 times, or you gardened 8 times, just because it's truly making you happy. If you actually find what makes you happy from within yourself, as a whole person rather than a needy, dependent person, and you kind of work on making that feed fatter, the feed that doesn't need the reward from the outside, and planting those seeds of what you can do without needing the outside world to pay you for it or hire you for it or consider you an expert or an influencer or a coach or fucking hire you so you can coach them how to eat salad or how to like touch your fucking pussy or how to like sleep at night or, I mean, can you give me a fucking break? You know, I feel like, I'm sorry, but I feel like this world has become a world of experts who know nothing but like, you know, the smell of their own ass. And that's about it. And they think everybody should like share in this knowledge, you know, like expertise is something that takes decades of commitment and it's something else, you know, and this is not what we're not talking about that now. Yeah. A lot of failure. And we're definitely not here to like judge specifically who's an expert in what at all. I'm just saying that, you know, take your pleasure for whatever it is, whether it's, you know, what makes you calm, whether it is like online shopping. You don't have to make a business out of it. Just like do it to relax. Don't even buy the stuff, you know, whether it is, I mean, whatever it is, you know, try not to overshare and instead to fulfill, you know, to fulfill your own need for happiness, because the more you can do that as a person in your entirety, as a circular entity, the more you can then be of use to those you love and perhaps those you want to serve.
Be of service.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge thing in Buddha. Like, so I've been practicing Buddhism. Like, I've been a devout Buddhist. I mean, I practice other philosophies too, but I practice, I'm a part of SGI, which is Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, that, you know, Nichiren Daishonin.
Yeah. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo.
Yeah. Uh-huh. It's so funny when I say that people are like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's usually people in the same like realm. But it's totally about, that spiritual practice in itself. And I'm not just, I've tried out a lot of spiritual practices and I've studied world religions and I'm an expert now. I'm kidding. But that was the biggest breakthrough I had in my faith, because it taught me how to actually, the laws of cause and effect, which are really as above and so below, that we practice in paganism as well, and, you know, witchcraft and Wiccan and all that stuff. But it taught me of like learning how if I could provide happiness for myself, then I can provide it for someone else. I can show someone else that it's possible, not through blind faith, but through practicing. Right. And that particular practice was the door opening to this confidence booster of practicing and taking tools that I've already had or tools that I've picked up or tools that I'm still picking up, because it's a lifelong practice. Yeah. And mixing them in to make your own cocktail. And sometimes you have to take out something because you don't want it anymore. It's not working. And you add something else in, but it was really about being of service and allowing and wanting to provide others with something that worked for you, that could be tailored to them, that will make them happy in the long run, or will allow them to open up part of their brain or part of their lifestyle that can call in something that is for them, whatever that may be, whether it's another spiritual practice or a person or money or whatever. But that was the most kind of rewarding awe factor of becoming vocal about these things that I've collected over 40 some odd years. 40 years, or say 40.
Well, I feel that, you know, the chant itself, you know, like chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo like a million times, let's say, you know, that time, the opening that you create into time is in itself transformative, even if you didn't do anything else or studied anything else or understood anything else about what you were doing. Being able to get that time out of like the feed, the social conditioned time, the time that you spend doing what you're expected to do like everybody else, opening up that space for yourself is pretty extraordinary, because while you're chanting, while you're meditating, while you're embroidering, as like our female ancestors did, you're also, your consciousness is growing. You give yourself time to understand otherness, to understand things that on like an electromagnetic level, rather than the same old, rather than just like reading the news or catching up on the news at the end of the workday. You give yourself that extra time to figure out what you've lived through and what you're becoming, even if it's not in a verbal way or in a narrative way. It's happening, right? So we're never really, our consciousness is not just like idle. Right now that we're in lockdown, we're not idle. Within us, the world of memory formation, or understanding, meaning formation, is constantly changing and shifting. So I feel that opening up time this way, that cannot be defined easily, is empowering.
Yeah, I agree. It's creating. That's interesting that you say it that way, because when you create that quietness, that stillness, and to take from the chanting. So the chanting, or any type of, which I know you're very well aware of because you do your scribal alchemy, but any type of wording is a vibrational kind of contract that you're making, no matter what you think. Words really are important. So you're making a vibrational pact, in the sense, with the universe. Chanting is a higher vibrational way of doing it. And then, but in the stillness, in the thought process, in the calmness, you're allowing that vibration to kind of, like, you're allowing that space for the vibration to happen. So it's a really beautiful process of how to be alone, how to take care of oneself,
right,
and how to then make space to bring others, however they manifest in your life, in that space.
Anything ceremonial and anything that has been repeated millions and millions of times has no longer actual meaning, So whether it is a prayer, a Christian hymn, a passage from the Bible, a chant in any language, a spell, a magic spell, a Wiccan spell that is, so mote it be, a spell that has been repeated, hallelujah, amen, aho, namaste, satnam, there are all these sounds that we make them not to specifically say something concrete, like per se, but it's a greater communicative tool, right? So it includes so much more. It includes all kinds of varieties of meaning in a simple sound. Sometimes it can include both sides, the opposite sides of a meaning in the same sound. And so it allows us to have a wider expression with each other. And by repeating them in a ceremonial way, so long as we don't get stuck in it, if by repeating them in a ceremonial way, we take, let's say, our individual, self-involved consciousness out of it, and that also opens up that extra space, breathing space. within which you can start asking questions that you didn't even know you had. So I feel that, you know, all of these different ways of being get you out of the limitations of like the self that you've, you know, come up with in order to survive in this everyday society we live in.
The self that you were taught to embrace.
To me, the way that the tarot is interesting, it is exactly in like the reshuffling and the ritual.
Tarot, it's energetic work. It's it's ever changing energetic work.
Right.
It's a tool.
It's a tool. There you go. Yes, that's what I think too. I think that it's a tool to change things around. So whenever you feel like, I don't know where I am, I'm having a moment of like complete foggy blindness, you know, which like a lot of people who have COVID-19 seem to have, you know, like the tarot will take you on another path, an unexpected path. So if you just put your trust in it, you will find yourself experimenting with something, you know, like a little detective. Like, what is over there?
I mean, you know, the tarot is it's such a tool, and it's such a tangible tool that people relate to. In reality, like to read any kind of energy, when you've been reading for a long time, you don't need your cards. I don't use my cards on myself. They look at me like, fuck you. What are you doing? Like, we're just going to give you every bad answer ever. So I don't I don't read my cards for myself. I stopped doing that about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because it just stopped working for me, because I already developed, I already went into the development stage of being confident in my intuition and having to follow it. And when I didn't listen to my gut brain, then
kind of going in and out of topics, which I thrive on.
Yeah, me too.
Exactly. Yeah, it feels like you do, you know, because I feel that too much of anyone.
I can have this conversation for a long time.
That's great. Because, you know, too much of anyone becomes dogma, and then it's no longer what we're you know, suggesting or looking for, you know. I mean, I have often found myself in my life doing all kinds of these things, many of these practices, and then you know, whether it's like reading someone or receiving messages, or, you know, or in whatever way, picking up energetic language and translating it when I'm asked to do it. But I don't do it. I do it if I feel that there is a lot of need from someone who asks, and for whatever it is. But I have never done any of these things in a regimented manner as my, you know, career or my, you know, like continuous daily practice, because I feel that then I will inevitably do them disservice. You know, I
agree with that.
So, and
because
again,
they become a product and a commodity.
Exactly, it's a commodification
of your
Exactly, yeah. And then, you know, once you start to basically simplify and organize any sort of other energy into a systemology that can be replicated for, you know, consistent use, then you also make it into, you know, an almost like a hologram of itself. You take the magic out of it, and it becomes just the practice. And I feel that, you know, especially in today's world of like artificial intelligence, right? And like all these people out there, you know, coding, you know, like translating human knowledge into, you know, code or system language that then computers can read and feed back to us. I especially value things that cannot be turned into, you know, code. I've always had that for myself. That has always been my aesthetic. When I write a novel, when I wrote my thesis, in college, I was very aware I didn't want it to be something that could be made into a movie. And when I shot a film, I was very clear I didn't want it to be something that could be turned into a book. So, but that's just like a simplification of my, my criteria. But really the ultimate criterion is this, can the computer find a way to repeat it? So, yes, we have like computer generated astrology every day, like all these apps, and we have computer generated tarot readings on our phones, readily available, and that's there. But that's all it is. You get like a little paragraph and you make out of it what you want. But, it's that quick. It's like an illustration. It's like almost an advertisement. It's like a commercial, right? But it's not like profound knowledge. It's not, an alchemy,
no, I mean, I think that's either a boredom or a desperate move at this point.
Yeah, it's entertaining, and that's fine. Like, so long as you know what your entertainment is, that's totally fine. We all need to like let go and just, sit back and be entertained by something. Can't be like.
But that's why I like. That's why I like practicing. That's why I like having ceremonial practices and using magic and creating with magic, because I think that magic in itself, and I'm not talking about like taking the bunny out of the hat magic, but like magic in itself is such a creative process. It actually fuels anyone's artistic cravings. It fuels that because of how beautiful rituals are, ritualistic practices are, because you're setting up your altar. You are cleaning your space. You are rearranging and smudging crystals, or you're making sigils, or you're playing with color and candles, and then if you want, you go into sex magic and stuff like that. So it's like,
yeah, you call on the 4 directions. Open circle,
exactly.
Close circle.
If you do traditional Wiccan, you do your circle. You call the 4 corners. You do a circle of salt. I mean, you're playing with herbs, and you're playing with all this stuff, and then there's something about it that actually provides this like creative outlet where you're not feeling so stuck or flustered with the original problem that you came to with this, say, spell, or this, desire to manifest, or desire to undo, or whatever it is. You're working with cosmology, you're working with moon cycles, you're working with the stars, you're working with the planets, you're working with the days of the week. It becomes this entire new way of like thinking.
You're just experimenting with things the same way that in the kitchen, when you cook, it's really more fun to just like kind of throw things in and see what comes out. Even though we've become more and more dependent on like cookbooks and recipes, and apps, and again, being told what to do.
I've never used any of that. I have so many cookbooks, and I've like definitely followed a sort of recipe before for like Thanksgiving, but I have never used a real recipe in my life.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I follow definitely Thanksgiving because I don't eat the turkey and I have to know how to cook it for other people.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is,
you don't want to kill anyone with raw meat.
Right. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not tasting it. So if I'm not tasting something, I have to have a general rule. But yeah, like I feel that this level of experimenting is exactly what science is about, So like right now we're all like, oh, please, scientists, like hurry up and save us. why can't they do it faster, even though trillions of dollars and bullshit is on the line? The reason they can't do it faster, is that's the nature of experimenting. That's the nature of trying things out. And you can speed this up because it's trial and trial again and imagining things and like saying, well, let me see, I gotta imagine maybe if it behaves this way, will it react this way? And if I try this medicine and if I try change this quantity and if I add this agent and what will there is, I wonder. And they don't know. Of course they don't know. They shouldn't know. They're not supposed to know, like what our mistake, I feel our mistake, regarding knowledge is that we think it's like a prefab thing, like I want to learn that language. Like what's the fastest way to learn to speak that language?
I think that
it's like, you're not really speaking the language. You're speaking like the basic words that, maybe you'll get you like some sort of, response, but you're not speaking the language. You want to know the language, you got to live it. You got to give it time. Whether it's your sex life or like your cooking or getting the vaccine for COVID-19, you give it time. We give it time. And you can't like know the outcome. Knowing the outcome is what the production machine, like the major in complex of like the marketplace wants. They want everything quantifiable and as predictable as possible. And that's where the robots come in, whatever. But we're not, knowledge is not like that. Progress is not like that. Change is not like that. It's actually, it takes time, experiment, trial, and, I don't even call it, there is no failure. It's just part of the learning curve, And so I feel like getting from where we are, which is, we get sick and we don't know exactly how, but there is an unease, a disease, and we're trying to get to a place where we can all be together again and feel at ease, right? That slow process is like an example of all of our other types of learning that we do in this lifetime. Whether it's like learning language, learning how to express love, learning how to, share or whatever it is that we feel we know, learning how to wait and listen. It takes time. It takes
so much time. I mean, that's, I honestly don't think, and I think that this is like, I don't think that until you're probably in your, I don't want to even say it because that might, it's because it doesn't apply to everybody, but it takes a lot of life experience to get to those, to get to that. You have to go through some shit to be able to be patient with time and realize that time isn't a thing. Like it's not a linear process. It doesn't really exist. It's just kind of how our perspective is.
The people amongst us who can least guide and lead the way when it comes to knowledge are the young, right? Because it takes, not because the elders need to teach them so much, but because it's going to take them time in their own consciousness to reinterpret in their own language what is going on around them and what life is giving them, So looking to the young to either write the books of the future or make the movies of the future and the near future, the music of the near future or whatever it is, design the clothes of the near future, make the commercials of the near future. It's just, counterproductive. They are doing their best, but they can't. The best they can do, working as hard as they can and being as creative and as imaginable as they can, is basically use the life experience they've accumulated, which is, limited. And yet we've lost respect for, those who have worked long and hard in their learning. I just feel that that's real. to me, you're an elder. I'm not talking numbers. I'm not talking age.
God.
I am just talking,
I'm
really, my thing is mostly about the visual. I feel that because our world has become so much about what we see on the screen, there is like such a, preference for what seems youngest, and there's something we're losing in exchange. But I'm not really not being I'm not even age specific, or definitely not specific to each person. And there are all kinds of gifts that super young people have. I mean, look at there are geniuses. We can come up with lots of examples.
There's
Beethoven,
environmentalist girl Greta.
Yeah, so there are all kinds. Yes, exactly. So this is not like a case to case conversation.
No,
I'm just saying in general, when you turn on the TV or when you turn on whatever it is, your main feed. Whatever that may be.
My main feed, yeah.
Yeah, your main viral feed. Speaking of the virus.
Sex magic on your own, which is actually the way that I tell people to practice it. I don't recommend using a partner unless that partner is absolutely 100% on the same page as you, because you have to be telepathically working for the same goal, like one goal at one time. So I do say to do it by yourself. I practice masturbation, self-pleasure. But in general, sex magic is basically doing a ritual that uses certain tools and uses orgasm to manifest anyone's desire, regardless of what it is. Though sex magic definitely does bode well with love, sex, or money, because sexual energy is mostly ruled by Venus. It could be ruled by Lilith, or it could be ruled by Pluto if you want to go into astrological configurations. But let's just say in generic, I like to, when I do sex magic courses, I like to say this is sex magic 101 vanilla, the most vanilla sex magic you can ever learn, because most people don't have any kind of formal training, or they're coming in with a curiosity. So I like to present them with the basics and the kind of old school Wiccan folklore type of sex magic. And it's very beautifully done. There's a whole entire ritual, which I don't have to go into. But so it's basically using sigil magic, which is a drawing or representation, a visual representation of the manifestation that you would like to desire. So your ultimate goal, let's say. So if my ultimate goal was to buy a red Ferrari, I could put a sigil of a red Ferrari, or I could put red Ferrari, and I would take out the duplicate letters, and I would use the lettering to draw a picture, and that picture would be on a white piece of paper or a brown piece of paper. And then I have my symbol. It's a symbol. I practice on Fridays because Fridays is ruled by Venus. So it rules the sex and the love and the beauty and finances and all that stuff. So Friday is the most powerful day. I use red candles because red represents passion. You could use white as well because it represents all. And I'm not going to get into the candle stuff, or like the actual ritual itself. But basically, whatever I want to manifest, I use in my, let's say, masturbation story, which I've never put in those terms. But we all have like fantasies when we masturbate, I would assume, if you're not watching porn. So I would suggest don't watch porn, obviously, and because that would take you out of like your manifestation process. And I would say do not use a toy. If you can help it, don't use toys, because that also takes you out of it brings in like an electronic, and it's just, I prefer the natural handheld mechanisms. And then you draw your sigil, you make sure your space is clean, you make sure that yourself is clean, but you kind of wash away everything that surrounds your intention. So you want to make everything kind of almost minimal to your intention. So the intention is the most important thing. And masturbation is used for a significantly long time to give yourself that like self-love and kind of create this vibe, this mood. And you place that sigil representation, the drawing, either on your chest or you hold it in your hand. So once you have an orgasm, you orgasm in your hands. That's why I say don't use the fluid or don't use a toy. And you take the fluid and you put it on the piece of paper and you wrap that piece of paper up, and you either carry it in your bra or your underwear, or you put it in your underwear drawer. The orgasm, the ultimate bliss to be your manifestation. You are in the I will, you are in the will it mindset. So it's already happened. It's already has happened. It's as if. So it's this like visualization, meditation using masturbation where you combine all of these tools, combine the ritualistic practices, combine the cleanliness and the stripped down naked of just really kind of focusing on the desired intent, and your orgasm is it. Visually, you're seeing it happen. When you come, you're seeing this already come to fruition. And so you take with that fluid is part of you going into your drawing, your creation of that. And then wrapping it up is keeping it safe, close to the heart. And that's why you put it in the underwear drawer. If you're a woman, you wear a bra, panties, whatever. And
how often do you do this for the same wish, let's say, hypothetically, and how long before you see something actually changing in your life? Again, I understand this is like a wild guess, but just to give our listeners.
I know I actually do have that. I have that estimate.
Okay, yeah, that estimate, exactly. That's a good word.
I would say that you have the most important thing is to have this clear intent, because you have to be very centered. I mean, obviously there's going to be like a little bit of like ridicule and doubt within, but you have to be centered where like you are detaching from the manifestation process, where you're detaching from the outcome, which means that you believe in yourself and your desire to come to fruition without holding on to the outcome so hard that you're going to kind of kill it with that energy afterwards. Because that the holding on to the outcome of any manifestation using any kind of magic will cancel out the manifestation process after the ritual is done. If you're like on top of it, looking at it, like figuring out if it's like working, you have to believe in yourself and believe in what you've done enough to detach from it and see it work out, like see it play out. So that's rule one. With that said, if you're able to do that, it takes about 1 month to see results on average. So 4 weeks.
Wow. Yeah. And you feel like just doing it once on a Friday with full intention is enough. You don't have to do it again. Well,
that depends. I do think that once with full intention is enough when it comes to certain things. When it is a little bit more dicey, when there's more factors within, sometimes you have to do it do it every Friday.
Okay.
But that's a case to case. That also includes, I've worked with ancestral altars. I've worked with different, like candle magic. I've worked with different magic spells where sometimes I've had to alter the dates of how long I'm using this spell work to create like elongated responses. So somebody that does something that's an ancestral altar might change the water on their altar, let's say every 7 days.
If one wants to take this into the relationship, then they agree on a common goal. Is that what it is?
Yes. Yeah, the common goal has to be shared by both, and both practitioners have to be able to be fully present, not in the sexual act in itself only, but be fully present in what their desired outcome is. That's why I say you have to practice with someone that's on your level. Because when you're with a partner for a long time that knows that you're a sex practitioner or that you believe in it, they might be able to understand a little bit more, and because you've already had these conversations or they've seen you practice or whatever, they understand a little bit more of what the intent is rather than someone that you're like, hey, do you want to come over to my place and practice sex magic? And they're like, fuck yeah, that sounds so witchy and hot and blah, blah, blah. And then they're more involved with like the actual aspect of what's going on than the intent.
Perhaps it makes the sex more focused on the magic if you're having, let's say, more casual sex elsewhere.
Well, I think it focuses more on the magic if you've been together for a long time.
Right.
And so you both are aware of each other's mentality and aware of like something that's bigger than yourself. When you have an open relationship, which I completely actually believe in, and I don't just believe in like I don't believe in poly. It's not the polyamory or friend always in front of me. It's not polyamory. It's not just being non-monogamous. It's actually about having open communication where you are so honest about your desires and needs that you can actually provide your partner with an open relationship because you are best friends and there is a shared respect of, hi, this is what I am craving or desire right now because there's something within me that I need to explore. Mm-hmm. And the person that you're with is like, wow, I love you, I respect you, and I want to be part of this in however their dynamic goes with the open relationship, because there's so many different ways of doing it. It's inclusive. So it's an inclusive relationship with a partner rather than going out and cheating on them. You're having an open dialogue about your desires, needs, and wants you're seeking from an outside party. Your partner is involved in that. So there's no emotional cheating. I think emotional cheating is a lot worse than physical cheating. I would rather have someone physically be with someone else than lie to me about it. Betrayal, emotional betrayal is so hurtful rather than having someone like knowing that they're inside of them, there's something physically not satisfied. And it's not because of you, it's because of whatever they've experienced in life and they need to experience a little bit more. And so you're part of that growing process.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for those practitioners that are doing sex magic that are in open relationships, they've gotten to that point where they can actually talk to each other, communicate their needs and desires, and understand that their relationship is actually priority, because if they didn't communicate those needs and desires, the relationship wouldn't be as prioritized.
Yeah, exactly. And so long as they're like in a place of openness, so they don't say, this is what I need, take it or leave it, this is who I am, but it's more like, this is what I need, but I want to do it, from in a way that we agree on together, so that you feel, a partner in it, and you feel equal, and you feel respected, and you feel included, and you have your hard limits, met, whatever they may be. Then it becomes a dialogue. So long as like both partners are open to kind of like adapting and change for the sake of the relationship gets stronger and it grows roots and, it grows taller.
It gets to be much more strong than a lot of other relationships that I've been witnessed upon, because they go through something that like, you're challenged.
Yeah, it gets tested in the real world.
Yeah, you are challenged to actually not deal with a partner's unfaithfulness, because that's a challenge within itself. And that's when like a lot of trust and loss of respect happens. But you are challenged in communication. You are challenged beyond your own belief. You are challenged to trust another person and at their word, because they are sharing so openly with you. That is like, to me, that is the ultimate unconditional love.
Yeah. I'm with you, definitely. And I think that it's worth doing. And, there's really no other way to have long-term relationships that don't leave people feeling that they sacrificed a lot for the sake of having this relationship, in this society that we live in, where we have so many options, and that could lead to resentment. So, just overcoming the fear of speaking about things, ideas, desires, is a great start, and then being open to hearing it from a place of trust. Yeah. So, and again, I feel like the sex magic that you spoke of opens up space for that, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's I think that it's a way of, that it opens up a way of communication between two people, but in reality, practicing it by yourself opens up a portal within you to be able to go into places like that in the future or near future or not, but being open to other people's experiences or future experiences, because you're able to hold more space for someone when you are reaching your own goals and desires, or you're able to understand the manifestation creation process better, and play with it.
Right. And you're more conscious while you're in your sexual being. So that's amazing. Making you conscious of what's happening, what you're doing, I think is wonderful, very liberating.
It's very liberating. Exactly.
Sex sleep for me. That's sex sleep.
Yeah, no, it's like absolute like moksha. It's complete liberation. It is a freedom within the being bound.
Right.
Being tied up. It's a freedom. Yeah. It's
unbound, uncovered, unleashed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. So thank you for coming, Franceasca, and sharing. And until next week, keep speaking sex. Death is a visual deceit, like a magic trick.